All right.
Callie, I have a question.
Of course. What's up?
I'm having issues with connecting my database. I just left my username and password as root and was hoping that was okay. Is that an issue?
It kind of depends on how you set up Postgres when you set it up. So like mine is an empty, like I didn't add a password, so it's just like an empty string.
I
And then
think I really, oh, I'm
mine
sorry.
is like the username for my, like if you look at your terminal, see how
Mhm.
my like username is Callie's Toast Cup. So that's what mine is.
Okay.
But it kind of depends on like did you just recently set up Postgres?
Yeah.
So yeah, it would depend on like what you set up there. And if you didn't set up anything, then I would just look at like I'd Google what like the defaults are, which I
Okay.
didn't set up anything, I don't think. And so mine was just my username and an empty string. So I guess I would try that first. But then yeah, I would just look into that, what like the defaults for Postgres are. Uh,
Okay.
so yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. So where we left off last time was that I was like, oh, let's push to GitHub, right, for our work. The issue with pushing in GitHub is what?
Did you I'm sorry. Did you do your .env files?
Not yet, right? So yeah, if I push to GitHub right now, I would be pushing what my username and password is for Postgres, which probably not the end of the world because it's my personal local Postgres, but you just want to get into like the pattern of always having an env and then not pushing any of your sensitive information to GitHub. And sometimes that can be hard to remember. So I like to just be in the practice of it just all the time. Okay. So you can, if you accidentally push it, you can go ahead and like scrub your Git history and stuff like that. It's not as hard as it looks, but it is a process. So just try to remember. So your env should go in like the root of your folder that you're working with, and you just do .env. And with NestJS, sometimes it's a little bit hard to set up because you have to, basically your files have to be able to read your env folder. So we're going to use the docs to get that set up. We're going to use the configuration over here. But first, let's just get our env variables over, okay? So really you could do like all of these in your env, like you have the type, host, port. But I'm going to just do the database username and database password. All right. A good reason for this would be that if you're working on a team with multiple people, your Postgres username and password is going to be different than their Postgres username and password, right? Because you're going to be running off of your local database. So whatever books I put in mine locally is not going to appear in your database. It's only going to appear in mine. So anything that's going to be different between team members, you would want to put in the env file. All right. So my host is Callie's Toast Cup, and then my DB underscore password is going to be an empty string. And I'm going to do like that. You don't have to put this in a string. You also can, but it's just automatically string. And I spelled my name wrong. All right, cool. So then what we can do here instead of Callie's Toast Cup is we would write process.env.db user. Did I call it DB user or username? Oh, DB host. That's not the host. Sorry, it's been a long day. Okay, username. So username here. Hey, Dan. And then I can put the password here. So process.env.db underscore password. All right. So yeah, you could do host and port because, for example, if you wanted your database to run on a different port, Postgres always runs at 5432, but you could like tunnel. We're not going to do that. But you could also make that an environment variable, and something like your port that your server is running on, right, is 3000. You can make that an environment variable because if you had multiple projects you're working on, all NestJS applications automatically hard code 3000, but maybe you would want one on 3000, your other project in 3001, and so on. All right. But those are just future enhancements you can make. All right. So we have that. But if you see, if we were to start our server up, all right, we are not connecting to our database here. So let's turn on logging to true. So when you turn on logging to true, all right, you can then see the logs from your database here, which our logs should be saying that we can't find connect to the database, but for some reason it's not mad at us. It's a lot of weird logs. All right, so let's check this then by we're to open up Postman again. And Postman is how we can actually hit the endpoints on our API. All right, so if I pull that up, if I post to localhost/book with our book here and I click send, it's magically adding it to our database. This is very weird. Maybe Postgres or maybe NestJS is automatically reading my environment variables here. It looks like it is. Interesting. My computer is weird because like Dan, you have problems even using NestJS configuration, right? You have to use .m to get it to read yours.
Yeah, so everybody had to do the same thing. I'm pretty sure you've got something set up on your computer that reads environment variables from outside somewhere.
I think so, because it's like very strange that just added a book. So normally you would have to go ahead and use configuration. So you would go ahead, and so I'll just go ahead and do this. I wonder, let's test this out a little bit and see if it's reading. So I'm going to just put in like a random thing here, right? So that's not my username. And this will test if we're reading it or not. Interesting. So I don't think it's reading my env variables. I think maybe, all right, so now let's try this. So let's just try blank string for both and see if that works. Interesting. All right, let's try
Something else.
So maybe like I can use a blank string for my username, or I could use my Callie Stoves Cup. I like this because I'm learning new things along with you guys. All right, but let's now put something random in the username here. And we don't connect. So it looks like a blank string for your username can potentially connect to your database as well. All right, but that does not mean that it's reading. Oh, but wait, so it's not reading the env file here. It's just saying, well, process.env is undefined. And apparently when something is undefined, so let's try undefined and see if that works. Interesting. So if you just leave out a username and password for my Postgres, it is fine with it. So it is not reading our env. But does that make sense on how we debugged that a little bit to try to figure out if it's reading the env or not? All right. So not helpful of me though, because it is allowing me to connect without any username or password. All right. Wonder if I can change my password in pgadmin. pgadmin change Postgres password.
Yeah, you can do it in there.
All right. Should we do it to force ourselves to read our env file?
Otherwise, you're cheating.
I am cheating right now, and I don't love it. I was wondering because I helped someone the other day with this too, and like we were clearly not using the right username and password, and it was still connecting. And I was like, this doesn't actually make sense why this is working, but I'm gonna just let it go. And I think this is the same thing. All right, how do I change my password?
Yeah, was it Johnny?
Yeah. Was
Yeah,
it?
I was trying to help him with it too. I couldn't figure out why it wasn't connecting to the right database.
Sure.
Properties. Advanced.
So that is your database itself. There's one for
It's
users.
telling me here, but I don't want to read it. The config.py file. All right. So maybe we won't change my password. Let's see how we can make this work though, to make it read it. So we're going to say process.env.db username or, but anything works here, right? That is so weird. How did we get it not to work? By doing like this? Is that how we got it to not work? Okay. So we are going to say process.env.db underscore username or that. So basically, can anybody explain to me what this is doing?
Yeah, so if you do have a DB username in your environmental, it will use it. If not, it will use the secondary string.
Perfect. Yeah. So basically, we're forcing it to make sure it can read this here. By saying use this, if it's undefined, use this, and this is clearly not the password or the username, so we'll do it. So for clarity, I'll just write like wrong username. But now this will tell us if we've connected to our env file. All right. So then we can do this here too, process.env.db password / or wrong password. So this is the setup part that we're doing here is kind of the hardest part. Once we're through this, everything gets a lot easier because like the routes are not too bad, right? All right, so let's go and follow the docs and see if we can get it going. All right. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to save this NestJS config. And if worse comes to worse, then we will just use Dan's method of using .m. But I just really want to get this to work. All right, so NestJS has its own config where supposedly it internally uses .m. So if anybody, have you guys used Express before? All right, so Express is like another like basic bare bones JavaScript server that you can use, set up for your backend. And typically you would have to use .m, and .m would just allow you to read your environment variables, right? So NestJS has a package, this NestJS/config that internally uses .m and is supposed to be able to get you to read your environment variables. So the way that it works is that you should be able to use this config module .root for root here in your imports in order to get it to read your variables. So dang. So unable to connect to database, role, blah, 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 does not exist. All right, so let's keep reading. You can import the config module. The above code will load and parse an env file from the default location, the project root directory. Okay, so we are in the API root directory, which is the project root directory for NestJS. All right. Merge key value pairs from the env file with environment variables assigned to process.env and store the result in a private structure you can access through the config service. The for root method registers the config service provider. So config module from NestJS, okay, which provides a get method for reading these parsed merged variables. All right, so a sample env file looks like that, which we have. This would be if you didn't have your env in the root of the project, you could say where the env file is. All right. When you want to use the config module on other modules, so we shouldn't need to because we're using it right in here, right? And the same one you can use is global true. All right, so this is if they separate the config out. And then you load it here. All right. For more complex projects, you may utilize custom configuration files to return nested configuration objects. All right. What's our vote? Should we use .m? Let's see if we try .m and it just magically works, and then we can refactor. All right. I am using ES6. Let's do it this way first. This is the way I've used it before. It doesn't like that though, does it? Fine. All right, let's paste this in. Not mad at that. All right, so now let's start our server again and see how we do. Ooh, still doesn't like it. Oh, you know what it is? Does anyone know what I did?
Get
Oh.
notepad? Got a username in there.
Same
The
thing.
same
Oh.
username.
Did I catch that a while ago? I swear my brain does not work. That's so funny. Okay, so it was reading it without the .m, so we could get rid of that because that said the same thing. I was like, wait, we changed it to wrong password. That doesn't make sense. All right, so let's change this then. Oh my goodness. Is anybody else's brain dead by 8 p.m.? All right. So quick tip. When you change something in your env file, your server, you know how we had like the hot reload? So anything we changed, that does not apply to your env. So like this is something that I hit against a lot when I first started, was like I would change something in my env and then just expect it to work, and it didn't. So if you change something in env, you do have to manually do Control-C to stop your server and then restart it. But any other file, it will automatically reload. But now you can see that we have connected to our database using env variables. So now that we know that that is working, I can go ahead and get rid of this or statement, but that's also a way that you could debug whether or not your env variables are picking up. What is another way that might be a more obvious way that you could debug whether or not your env variables are working?
Usually what I do is I console log it. I guess I'm trying to figure out where I would console log it here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. You just try to console log it into the terminal and see if it shows up.
Exactly. And that is a great thing to do if you have like some normal JavaScript where it's like a function and there's a line that's going to get called. And you could do that if you refactored a little bit. So if you, for example, are going to take the build in public workshop, we are going to be a little bit fancier than the way we did this. And we're actually going to use a configuration file. So if you look in here, you can see that this is just a function being called. All right, so what you could do is you could see here, it's like, it's just automatically returning this, so it doesn't have the return statement. You could add the return statement and then add a console log in there if you wanted. Using the OR works too though. So yeah, okay, cool. So now we got that working, we can go back and start looking at our routes. So we have our post book route working. All right, what is something that if we were going to be fancy, do we see an issue about here?
What we're currently looking at, the same book with different IDs.
Yeah, so we have the same book 3 times, right? So I guess you could in one hand say like, well, I guess in a library you could have the same book multiple times and they would have different IDs, but that would be something that you would either go to your product person on and ask like, when you're setting this up, like, do you want us to be able to add the same book twice, right? Do you want it to have like an inventory table where instead you have like a count of how many books if someone tries to add a book multiple times? And like, that's kind of how things can start to grow, right? For this thing, I don't think we care. All right. So what's another route that we would want to have? We can add a book to our library, but what else should we be able to do?
A patch.
Yeah. Okay. And can somebody explain the difference between patch and put?
Go ahead.
I thought I knew the difference. I know it's just an update, but what is the specific?
Yeah, I thought put is when you can push something up and there's nothing there, but patch, you're updating something that's already there. I don't know if I'm remembering that correctly though.
Yes. So patch is like you're editing one part of the object, right? So you would be like, I want to change the title of the Cat in the Hat book. Put would be I'm replacing the book object that I had with a whole new book, object. So I'm updating the object, but I'm sending all of the information with it, okay? A really great way if you start to be like, ooh, should I use patch or put? I use Copilot a lot. So what you can do is you can actually, just like you would ask a question to like, if you wanted a mentor at work or something like that, you can be like, what's the difference between patch and put? And then Copilot is going to tell you an answer. And also, I mean, this you could probably Google too, but it's going to give you lots of information, right? So put, right, it's going to replace the entire book. Patch is going to only replace the price field. All right. So I typically use put because I'm kind of lazy and I think it's easier to just send all of the stuff. Whereas with patch and the thing, you'd have to say like what you're changing. You know what I mean? You'd have to be like, I want to change the price. I want to change the author. But I can do either. What do you guys prefer?
You do put.
All right, so
Okay.
all right, so let's do put. You're going to import that from NestJS Common. All right, and then Copilot's already telling us what to do, but we're going to do book. And then why do you think it's saying the /:ID? What does that mean here, do you think? Ah, Copilot, calm down.
You need to know which book you're updating.
Perfect. Yep. So this is going to be a query parameter. And so this, yep, is gonna, you're not actually hitting the route book /:colon ID. You're saying book /1, book /2, right? And then whatever ID you pass in is going to be the record in the table that you're going to change. So if we say book /1, it's going to change this record here. Okay. And then we can just go ahead and click enter. I'm going to let Copilot do its thing, and then we'll go ahead and figure it out. All right, so similar to here, we are going to send a body with the request. And because we're using put, which is replacing the entire thing, then we would need to send the entire book object. So this makes sense here. All right. The next thing that it's grabbing here is the parameter from the URL here. And that parameter that it's looking for is going to be called ID. All right, so it's looking for that ID there. And then we're going to name the variable that will work within the function ID. Okay. And then what is this statement here doing?
It's sending the request with the new book object to that ID.
So it's sending the ID of what book we want changed and the new book object that we want it changed to the update book method in app service. Why is it mad at that?
Oh, did we make an update book?
No, we haven't done it yet, but now we have to, right? So the controller is just takes the request and then it passes it along, okay? So the app service is where we do all of the work. All right. So what we need to do is we need to go to app service. But beforehand, what I want to do is I'm actually going to comment this out. All right. And I am going to just throw a console log in here and Copilot knows what I want. I want to look at the ID and the book because last time we did everything at once and then we were like, oh, we got to debug. So let's just do one thing at a time and see how it goes. All right. So I'm going to go over here. And now it's not going to do anything, right? The only thing it's going to do is log what the body and the parameter is, right? So if I change this here to put, all right, and then I send this with book /1, all right, I should see what in my console.
Book is cat in the hat. ID is 1.
So I should see this whole book object and then ID 1. All right, perfect. So we have ID 1, so it's reading that from our URL fine and it's reading the book. All right, so now that we have that working, I'm going to actually just cut this and then comment this back in. All right. Now let's go to our app service. All right, and we want to create our update book. Oh my gosh, Copilot. Let's go ahead and look at what it says. Why am I using async here and await here?
I know it's a promise. I'm trying to think. So it can wait. It can wait till it updates before it executes. Like no.
I would also say that since there's a chance that that something could happen, that's why I use async await.
So basically, anything that's a request that's gonna take time, right? You're gonna want to await it for. So something like calling an API or using or adding something, updating, reading from a database, right? Those are actions that are connecting to a different system. That's gonna take some time. So you need to wait for that action to happen in order to return anything, right? If we left this out, this would likely return nothing back. It would just send off the request. It would say, go update this, bye, I'm out. So we're saying, go update this. I'll wait for you to update it. I'll get the response that you send back, and then I'll go back. So yes, you could use a promise with this, but typically you wouldn't. Okay, I don't know. I've never used a promise in the workplace. I've only used promises in like boot camps learning about this stuff. Typically I've used async await, unless I'm in a use effect. But then I still don't use promises. What's the dot then one called?
That's a promise, huh?
Is it still called a promise?
Oh, I don't know. You know, it's been a minute. Dot then, like the catch and the dot then and the try.
Yeah. You have to wait for it still, but you're not saying async await. I don't know. We'll get to use effect in the beginning. You can actually use async await on a use effect. All right. So last time I couldn't remember that this was saved, so I figured we should look up the docs for type ORM, and these are going to be the docs that you can use. And you can kind of see what's going on, and it looks like dot update is going to be where it's at. So we'll see. All right, so we are saying update book. We're getting an ID that's going to be a string and a book that is going to be a book DTO. I guess it is a string. All right, and here we're console logging the book, which I'll leave, that's fine. And then we are adding it, we're updating it with the ID and the book. So our repository is going to go find that book and then swap it out with the book that we send to it, and then return the object. And so we will see that in Postman. So now let's go ahead and save this. Our error should go away because now we have an update book. All right, but instead of calling this cat in the hat, I'm going to go ahead and replace this with another book. So let's do From Blood and Ash. Great read. Not really that great of a read. I don't know. Debatable, apparently. Oh my gosh, this is a really long name. Jennifer L. Armentrout. All right, we're going to do fake books moving forward. This is going to be a romantasy book. And I think it cost me $17. So we'll say that.
Romance with blood and ash in the word. The title?
Yeah, it's this one. Shout out Jennifer Armentrout. I enjoyed your book. It's a little romance, little fantasy, you know? All right, so what do we think this is gonna work? What are our guesses? Or did anybody see a mess up in there? Let's see. All right, so we sent it in, we see the book log, so we know it's making it here, and then we see that what we get back. All right, what is this? What do you guys think this is saying?
I'm not seeing that.
So it's saying affected 1. It is saying in our database, if I refresh our database, you can see that it went in and edited it. So it's saying that what was affected by that command was 1 row. 1 row was affected. All right. So how helpful this information is to return, not sure. I'm going to change it You don't have to, but I'm going to change it later because we need a few more routes first. All right, so we can post a book. We have that we can update a book. What are we missing?
Delete.
Book.
Delete, and what else?
Update.
Kind of the most important one.
Oh,
Retrieve.
Reading the book.
The
Reading.
get route, right? All right, so let's start with the get route because I'll show you what I like to do with the get route.
oh,
All
I
right.
thought I saw good. I thought I saw good.
Yeah, we like just the get hello world one.
Oh, okay.
All right, so there's a few different get routes that we can do, right? So there's get all of our books, and then there's get one book. All right, so let's start with get books. And actually, should we then rename this to post books and put books at ID? What are our thoughts? I'm really bad at naming conventions. Let's look it up, shall we? CRUD naming conventions. All right. Okay, so they're using resource.
Because we are essentially like adding one at a time, right?
Yes. So it looks like here they're just using get resource. Would that be read, right? All resources then at once and then slash. All right. So it kind of looks like get book would be getting all of the books, and then get book at ID would be getting one of them. Does that seem right? All right. So let's do async get books. We might have to look this up more and change this, but that's okay. We'll keep typing. Okay, so we want to get all of the books. So we don't really need to pass anything in the body because all we're saying is go look up all the books. So this should be really easy. We want to say return await this dot app service dot get books. All right, and then we don't have to pass anything in because we want all of them. It's mad because that doesn't exist. So let's flip over to our service and add it. So I'm going to just replace this here with get books. All right. And then it's not returning a string here. So I'm going to get rid of that part. All right. And then I'm going to make this async because we're going to be dealing with a request from the database. So if I use this async, I have to also use what?
Oh, wait.
Oh, wait. And then I'm going to say this dot repository dot find. All right. If I leave that blank, so find, the way that it works is it's going to go find anything that matches like what we pass in. So, right, we might pass in like ID in order to find the specific ID. If we pass in nothing, it's just going to find everything from this table. All right. So save that. If I go here and I change this to get, and then I send it, now you can see that it is going to give me all of my books in there. Okay, and it's going to give it to me in an array. All right, why is it giving me 2, 3, and then 1?
Is it in the order like that you last touched them, I guess, in a sense?
Yeah, exactly. So we can order them. How? Let's figure that out. All right, so type ORM, order by. All right. So this is also a note, like you don't have to remember everything. You just have to know what you're looking for and then how to look it up, type of a thing. All right. So lately I've only been using SQL commands, and that would be with order by. All right, so it looks like we can just use the order command. So we might need to find our way around this a little bit. All right, so order ID descending. That looks pretty good. And then it's pretty guess and check. So descending to me would mean that it's going to do 3, 2, 1 for the ID. So I like to guess before I do something and then see if it goes. Yep, 3, 2, 1. So I actually want ascending because I want it to be ordered by ID. All right, so 1, 2, 3. But let's say that you wanted it ordered by something else. Maybe we can. Let's see if we can try it with title. All right, so now if I do title, you can see that it's going to give me cat in the hat because that's alphabetical, then cat in the hat. It looks like ID is like the backup, or maybe it's updated by, and then from blood and ash. All right, so that is another way that you can use some different things in order to order. All right, so now we can get all of the books. But what would happen if I wanted to just get one book? How do you think that?
Are you gonna change the ascending back to ID?
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Oh, but also to answer your question, wouldn't you do pretty much the same thing, but you actually pass a parameter in there for the find?
Exactly. All right, let's see. So Copilot, you are correct. All right, so we are going to pass in a parameter to the URL that we're using on our request. Then we're going to get that parameter. We're going to look by ID. So like if I change this to blah, 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 it's going to look at the URL for a parameter that's called blah, 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 right? So then it's not going to work. So ID. And then we're going to use the variable. We're going to store that parameter in the variable ID, and then we're going to pass that variable into our app services get book method. All right, so if we head over to our app service get book method, that doesn't exist, but we can go ahead and do it. And so, yes, you can see that we can create get book. It takes an ID, and then we'll return await this book repository.find one ID, and it's mad. All right, let's look. So another tip is if you have a syntax, a little squiggly, you can hover over, and if you have like Copilot or the free version is like Codidium or something, you can do quick fix. And then I don't fix with Copilot because it actually changes your code, but I use explain with Copilot, and it will tell me why it thinks it's wrong looking at the code on my page, which is a very helpful debugging tool. I think my syntax is just wrong on this. I think it should be in brackets, but maybe I'm wrong. Right. So it wants me to, yeah, basically just put it in brackets, right? So we're gonna put it in brackets. So what is this? Oh, maybe it's not. Found one error.
Yeah,
Find.
it's saying find one by instead of
Ah. Smart. Good reading. All right, but it's still mad. Why is she mad? ID string. Do you think it's supposed to be a number? Because ID is an integer. So what if I change this to number? Yeah, I think it's supposed to be because ID is going to be a number. So let's do, is it to int with JavaScript?
parse int.
Parse int. So like parse int like that.
Yep.
Been reading too much Go. All right. All right, so now this is a number coming in and this should work. I also think that I don't know why it's mad still. Are you mad? Parse int ID doesn't like that. Argument type number is not assignable to parameter type string. So can I just change this to number? Copilot TypeScript.
Do you have to take the parse int out now?
Maybe. Ensuring that it's treated as a string in the get book update book methods, parse and ID, remove that. Yeah. All right. Let's see how we feel about that. Still mad. All right. Oh, wait. Maybe I was using the wrong parse. I imported that. All right. There you go. I didn't save the service file. Okay, so find one by ID. I think we should also now be able to use find one and then not wrap. No, all right, I guess we have to use find one by and wrap it. All right, so find one with ID in brackets. We're passing in an object, right? Why can I just say ID in brackets? I'm doing like a shortcut here. What is the shortcut that I'm doing?
You're deconstructing, right?
So because basically what this is saying is it's saying ID is equal to ID, but because ID is named ID, then I can just shortcut it and do this, right? But let's say I had this ID as equal to ID and I changed the name of my parameter to book ID. I could either do book ID like this, and that would work, but I couldn't do book ID like that because it's going to yell at me that there's no book ID on our table. Okay. So it has to do with the way I'm naming this. So I'm naming this ID so I can say this. In SQL, this is basically saying where ID is equal to ID. If you guys have used just SQL before. All right. So now let's see if we can find a book with its ID. All right, so get book /1 cannot get book /1. Well, that's not nice. Not found. All right. If I make this a string, are you then found? All right, let's console log this and see how we're doing. Oh, I see what my error is. Does anybody else see what my error is?
The capital? Oh, no, not that. Ignore me.
It's me being dumb again.
You need an actual number? Oh, no, it's good.
Oh, it's books instead of books.
Yes, it's just me
It's a
having
spelling error.
Oh.
to be honest, is most of the time what it is, if I'm being honest. Okay, there we go. And so now our get book works. So we probably could change this as well, just for consistency to number. And then we would have to go in here and change this to number, which felt a little bit weird calling it string before. So let's just make sure update book works. So put, let's say book 2, and then let's change this to Grumpy Monkey. I don't know who wrote that. I'm so sorry to the author of Grumpy Monkey. I love your work. I don't know. It's a great book, even though my daughter never wants to read it. Youth. It was probably also pretty expensive. All right. So now if I send that in, is this one books? Why am I calling all of them books? Naming conventions, am I right? All right, so affected 1. So now let's go back and do get book 2, and we see it's Grumpy Monkey. All right, so if you are on the front end, all right, and you're like adding a book, what ultimately would you want to come back from the back end for your front end? Does that question make sense?
What do you mean?
Like a confirmation that the book has been, or
Like the 200?
So yeah, I mean, you
it's
would want
good.
confirmation. I would want, so if I have like, if the point of my app is to list all of the books that I have, and then right, we have a little form for adding a book, and a user goes and adds a book, right? What
Okay.
I want is the whole list to update, right? Okay, so you could do that with 2 calls, right? You could say, post the new book, all right? And then go make a call to get all of the books, right? That'd be 2 API calls though. How could we do this in 1 API call?
Did you make a try catch in the, maybe not try catch.
So let's go over here. We're going to go into our service, right? So basically you want your back end to do all of the heavy lifting for you. You don't want your front end to have to do heavy lifting. Could you do a separate Git request? Sure. But you have more likelihood that that Git route is going to fail, and it's also going to take longer because you're doing 2 requests, right? So what if instead of returning, right, the book that's created, let's just say, all right, create this book, save it for me. And then what I want you to do is I want you to return await Git. Do I need to do this? Dot Git books. Because that's essentially what you were going to do on the front end, right? On the front end, you were to say, add this book, then go get me my books. You can just do it all right here. You can say, save this book in the database, and then give me back all the list of books. So now if I go and I post a book, I'm going to just say test, sure, okay? And I send the book, now I get the whole list of books back, right? Which is ultimately what you would want on the front end, okay? Could I have done this where I post a book and then I just on the front end add that one book to my list? Yes, but that will be some more work. So the point of this is when you are making a full stack application, you want to think of like, what do you want the back end to do? What do you want the front end to do? And where do you want the heavy lifting? I prefer all the heavy lifting on the back end, and I want to get back exactly what I want from those API calls. All right. But now, before, if you remember when we did a put book, right? And sure, I'm just going to do that. It just tells us that it affected one row. But as the developer, that doesn't help me, right? If I'm the front end developer working on this, it's like, okay, cool, it worked. But now I have to like figure, like, what if you were having, so like, what if on your form on the front end, people could type in like any lowercase letters or spell the book wrong, and you were to clean up their format, capitalize the letters for them, look up the correct spelling, right? You wouldn't want to just add their spelling to the front end look. You would want to actually get what's in the API. So this response to me is not very helpful. So I can do once again, add this to the book repository, and then return me the list of books. So now if I update a book, it's going to go ahead and send me back all of the updated books, and then I can just use that on the front end. All right, questions?
Okay.
I do want to know why you wouldn't want to return specifically the book you placed in versus the whole all of the books. Is there a reason you choose to send all of the books versus like if I return, let's say you updated the second book, and on your return statement, why don't you return and you get that specific book and return it again?
It would
If-
just depend on the design on the front end and what, if you're the front end developer, it would depend on what you wanted, or it would depend on what your front end developer wants to, and like what the purpose of that page is. I'm imagining that we have a list of books and then I just go edit a book and then all of the books update. For me, that seems simpler to do on the front end to like update my list of books. But yeah, you could definitely just return the one book that you updated and update the front end that way either.
Thank you.
So yeah, you could also do like a try and catch here. So right, like if for some reason you can't edit this book, maybe you want to send an error message back instead. So maybe you want to throw an error if that doesn't work. There's definitely a lot of ways that we could go with this, but I think we're gonna call it here for this. All right, we've got one last route. What's our last route that we need to add?
The delete, right? Or remove.
Yep. Is that just delete? Yep, looks like it's just delete. All right. Yes, Copilot. All right, so once again, we are going to use the book and then use the ID for the one that we want to delete. And Copilot knows once again what we are doing. All right, I will say if you have not typed this in a million times, you should type it in and not let Copilot predict it for you. I'm just feeling super lazy. But when learning something new, always type it. Even if Copilot's telling you what to type, just muscle memory it. All right. So then this app service delete book. So we're gonna have to go to our app service and add a method for deleting the book. All right, and it already knows our pattern, right? So we're going to delete the book. When type RM deletes a book, it returns the same thing as put, where it says affected how many rows. So Jack, like you said, we could just return the book. I mean, the book is now deleted, so you would actually have to get the book information before you deleted it if you wanted to return what book was deleted, or you can just go and get all of the remaining books. But it's up to, or you could send nothing and it could just be a success message and say like, yay, you deleted the book, right? It just kind of depends. Do you want to manage the state on the front end or always have it single source of truth from the API? All right, so let's give that a try. So book 1 is test. So let's go ahead and change this to delete and then send. Cannot delete book 1. Oh, what did we do wrong? Oh, I didn't save. I was working and pair programming with one of my mentors, and I did this where multiple times I forgot to save, and he was like, you know that you can set VS Code to autosave for you. Why would you not do that? And the answer is I'm lazy, but I shall pass that tip along. You can make VS Code autosave as you type, so you don't run into this issue that I run into multiple times a day.
But
All right,
somebody
now-
once told me like to try not to use autosave, so I for some reason. So I, like I always thought it was frowned upon. It's like if you're doing a lot of different things and it automatically autosaves after like 1 second or 2 seconds. And
Yeah,
then-
it stresses me out too, but I mean, hey, teach their own on what the best thing is. But yeah, and now we have deleted that book. It is no longer in there and we got our book list back. So the way we did this is that we went ahead and the only one, oh, so see, we don't have a book 1, so nothing is coming back. But our update and delete and our post all return the whole list of books. All right, are there any questions? Any at all? Is anything fuzzy about what we did today or last week? Or do we feel good?
I feel pretty good. I think everything's been pretty straightforward.
Very cool. All right. So now we are going to push to GitHub, which we should be doing very frequently. So like, don't let 2 weeks go by without pushing in GitHub. You should push all the time. You should not wait 2 weeks to create your env file. All right. So I do my pushing to GitHub the long way always, but I like to do git status to see what files have been changed. All right. And you can see that all these new files, and then you can see that if I add this, it's going to add my env file. So what do I need to do then?
Add it to your git ignore.
Perfect, thank you. And that is why we do the git status, because you can see it's like an extra check to see like what are you about to send to GitHub, right? So now you can see that it does not see my env at all, and that makes me happy. So then I can say git add dot, which is going to just add everything that I've changed. And then you can also, if you really want to, do git status again and see everything is green, and then git commit. Now there's 2 ways, or maybe there's more. I'm the type of person who I learned it this way, where I just do git commit and then I do and then type in my message. So finished API routes and connected database. But you can also do -m to type your message right in the terminal. And then we're going to do git push. All right. So if we head over to GitHub here, we will see that we have this branch, CS create API, had recent pushes 2 seconds ago. So if you are at work and you have done your ticket, right? Maybe your ticket was create a basic API with some CRUD routes and a database. You would then be done with your ticket. So it would be time to compare and pull request. All right. So you would follow whatever your team's protocols are. So for example, at my previous job, we had like a form that was here and you had to check off these boxes and fill out these answers. And honestly, no one did it. It was like a little bit too much. My new job, I really like the way we do it. So the title is what you changed, and then the description is why you changed it. So your commit, your last commit is usually going to be the automated title. So you can say like create CRUD API routes and connect to database. All right, and then you would say like what the purpose of this change to your application is. And so maybe something like, for this one, it's a little, I mean, it's silly because we're creating a full stack application. CRUD application, this was the backend work. But let's say that you're doing a change because like there was a bug, you would explain like, here's what the bug was. This is why we decided on the path that we decided on. And it gives your reviewers the information about like why you did what you did. So automatically when you do like the create pull request from your branch, it will set this up. What it's saying is that I want to take the code that's on my branch and I want to merge it into the main branch with the rest of my team is working. All right. When I create my pull request, it's not going to do that. It's just going to request that I want to. Typically, you would have your team under reviewers. I don't have a team because it's just me working on this repo. So I can go ahead and click merge pull request myself. But typically, you would have, this would be blocked. There would be a rule here saying that until you have one review, you can't go. So I don't have that. So I'm going to merge, confirm merge. All right. And you can see that they are saying that we can go ahead and delete our branch. So that's good practice. You want to delete your branch because we're no longer working on that. That work is done. So if I go over to my book CRUD, before you just had the README, and now you can see that we have our API folder and you don't see an env in sight. In terms of VS Code, also, did that all make sense? All right. All right, so then in terms of VS Code, you would just go ahead and do git checkout main. All right. Also, there's other ways to do this too. Oh, yes, I would like to add node modules to git ignore. Oops. Did I put node modules in here? I don't really see it. But that's good. All right, so git checkout main and then do git pull because you're pulling down the work from main, which is aired. Please remove the following untracked working. Oh, so git status. Basically, oh, I'm in the wrong. Where am I? No, I'm not. Oh, you know what I did? I was in the API folder when I was pushing. So I think it might have not pushed everything correctly. I don't know them. All right, let's see. So git add, git status. Okay, so this is all the dist, which should be ignored too. Oh, because I'm on main. All right, this is being annoying. So get, now can I do git pull? It says I can. Commit or stash. Can I do git stash? And then git pull. All right. So we did have node modules, but it doesn't look like they're checked in to me. All right,
Oh, I think what happened was your branch slightly diverged because of the you installed node modules, so it wasn't letting you pull.
oh, okay. Oh, because I switched to main and then installed it. All right,
Yeah.
well, it is on my git ignore. So yeah, git, it's super fun. And yeah, so we should be fine. So then now at this point, you have main pulled. So if you would go, you would just do git checkout B for your next ticket and name your next branch. So CS front end would be our next branch. And then I like to get push to start out with, just so my team knows what I'm working on if they want to look at my branch and see. So now nothing is different about that branch because we haven't done any work, but you can see that now we have two branches. We have main and CS front end. All right. When you are working by yourself, it's a little bit confusing because main and your branch are always going to be the same, right? So when you're like you merge it in main and then it's same, so it kind of feels weird to check out main and go. But the benefit of pulling main and using main is mainly when you're working with a team. And then also just in case that let's say you want to do a feature and it's crazy and you break a lot of stuff, you can just switch back to main and be like, I'm not going to worry about that branch. All right. Any questions before we head out for the day? This is fun, helpful. Yeah.
It was helpful as always.
It was very helpful.
All right. Well, we get to do some fun in 2 weeks. We'll move on to front end, which is much more fun.
Yeah. Oh, Callie,
Yes.
question. I'm still having that database issue. It's a weird error that Google is not helping. Can I message you and see if you've seen that error before?
Sure. Let me just stop recording.